Hello and welcome to another episode of Fun Facts with Liam, the third episode of this week. And one fact I've had in the books from that for I guess 2-3 weeks, something like that. I don't keep track. But when I look down in my files for reference, and that's for today. That makes any sense. And this is about the Maine law, also known as the Prohibition period before the Prohibition period. And not only is this kind of, I guess you could say, proto or lost prohibition some 67 years before Prohibition started, but it actually crossed over into my neck of the woods. Well, kind of up north anyway. Not quite Yorkshire, but Lancashire. So basically, the Maine law that started in 1853 in Maine. Stephen King country, where he sets most of his works. God, that must have been a boring time for Pennywise. Oh, probably quite a fun time, actually. Who knows? Depending on all the chaos and paranoia we could weave. But basically, there was also, coincidentally enough, like in Boardwalk Empire in the first series, there was the whole temperance movement thing, but also the temperance movement had also been going for a long time, probably since the Maine law stuff, which also it crossed over into Manchester, England, Lancashire, and it all coincided or became like a sort of bolster thing, vehicle thing for the temperance movement, where drink was the devil. There was there were all sorts of newspaper gazette things on it in Manchester. So while all the Industrial Revolution stuff was kicking off, and blokes were hard at graft and wanted a pint and stuff like that, all this kicked off, and probably the same stuff happened in Maine, where I'm guessing if they weren't, it's educated guess, if they weren't like factory workers, then they were, longshoremen and fishermen and all the rest of it, proper hard, manly graft jobs. So they'd want to drink, and then all of a sudden this Maine law came in and crossed over to the other side of the Atlantic as well. So not only was the hard graft of all the complicated political stuff of all the Luddite stuff, that's basically they were like a sect of like land tillers and farmers who got together and opposed the whole, they took her jabs kind of thing. If you understand, if you've seen South Park, you'll understand what I'm talking about when I'm doing that attempt at a redneck accent. But basically, that's what it was part of as well. There was all this unrest. There was the temperance law with the women's rights stuff that had been going on around even before people like Emmeline Pankhurst had been born, or just around being born. The suffragette stuff that would go into the 1920s, and all the rest of it. So the Luddites. It wasn't Eli Whitney, but it was someone else. I forget which. Eli Whitney was actually an American kind of inventor who kind of, he was making it big during the Industrial Revolution. The cotton gin and all the rest of it. I said that, all the rest of it. I've got to stop repeating myself. So that was the machine doing a lot of the work for you. Well, in those days, the actual wasn't the machine was doing a lot of the work for you, and all the factory stuff as well. So the Luddites were opposed against that. So you got that political, you got that unrest, and then you got the temperance stuff, which people were up in arms about, and then the prohibition stuff that interestingly crossed over into the north of England, which is why I wanted to talk about that one, because it's it's like one of those things where just because it's the first time you've heard about it in equivalent more modern times, it doesn't mean something very similar or more or less the same hasn't happened before. And the prohibition thing, it wasn't new. It was basically the whole Volstead Act was based off good near 70 years after someone kind of took the idea of like a decades gone thing, where it was a combination of religious stuff and women's rights stuff, but sort of religious stuff. And I think the main difference was in Boardwalk Empire style prohibition, for lack of better words. It was good money making scheme for gangsters and corrupt politicians. It was yeah. So I suppose, and also the main law stuff in the 1850s, people probably made dishonest money out of that too by getting around it and all the rest of it. Said that 3 times now. So yeah, that was the Maine law and how it crossed over into Manchester, and not Manchester by the Sea like the Casey Affleck film. So yeah, remember to like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the 4th one of this week. And I'll see you then.